Hello, so today we're gonna work on a deer hide. Our main goal is going to be to brain tan that deer hide, but we're gonna start from the start. And on the start, we'll be talking about materials first. And first, you just want a beam, and that's a pole, that's a tree that you want about the same size as you are. And then at the end, you want to cut a 45-degree angle, just so that it sits flush against a tree like that, and your hide is going to be pinned between the pole and the tree. There's two different kinds of poles. There's upright beam, which is this, where pretty much we're going to be scraping down, just pulling towards you. And then over there we have a pull beam, or pushing beam. I don't remember what those are called right now. I don't use them at all because I don't like them very much, but some people do prefer those beams rather than the upright beam. And pretty much is a setup where you can just have a pole against a tree, and then you lean against the pole like this, and then you're gonna scrape down like so. And I don't like that very much. It seems I have a lot less strength pushing down than pulling towards me like that. But a lot of women especially like this better for whatever reason. But we're going to use the upright beam here. And the second thing is your scraper. That's a metal scraper. You can use bone if you want to be pretty tough. But bone, you have to sharpen it really often. So I just use my metal scraper so that I don't have to mess with that. And it can be any edged tool as long as it's not sharp, so it's a dull edge. And you can use a draw knife, an old draw knife if you have one, just dull the edge that you don't cut yourself. Like if you move your fingers across, you mustn't cut yourself, otherwise you will cut your hide. So that's my tool, and you can buy those actually from braintan.com. It has all the materials necessary to do all that kind of stuff, including the hides. So I get all my hides from hunters in the fall. You can also get hides from meat processors like game, animal processing people, butchers and stuff like that. The minute you have their hide. You can also buy them at braintan.com, like I said. And we are going to move. They're pretty heavy. This is a big, thick one. That's gonna one of the most challenging parts, is moving them around. Okay, put them up on the beam. Like so. And some people like to start with the most difficult part, which is the neck. And you can recognize the neck because it's a lot thicker than the rest of the hide. And you can also see that all the hair kind of flows down. So that'd be the tail and that'd be the neck. But I like starting with the easiest part and then just have a good time instead of getting tired on the hard part first. And so I start about mid-back, and then I pin my hide against the tree, and then it just stays there. And so the first step is going to be to remove the hair and the grain that's underneath. And I'm going to try to show you all the different layers here that you have to deal with. So the motion here is one of scraping. You never want to slice to the side, you always want to scrape down, straight down. And here's the hair. I guess I should talk about what I did before I started scraping. So I got the hide, we fleshed it real good. But this one actually was not fleshed really good, so I removed all the flesh with this one tool. Remove all the flesh and fat, and then I soaked it in a tub like that, and I covered it with water and weighted with stone because the hair is hollow, so the hide floats when it has hair on. And some people use lye to soak their hides in, which is fine. The problem with lye is that you have to dispose of it um, in a sustainable way, in a good way, and that's kind of hard to do. And so I just use straight water, and it just works just as good. And I soak the hide, and the amount of time that you soak the hide depends on how hot it is outside. If it's really hot, then the hide might be ready in 2 to 3 days. If it's colder, it can take a week or even 2 weeks sometimes. And the way you tell whether it's ready or not is that you can pull on the hair, and if it comes out easily, then it's ready to go. Otherwise, you can let it stay a little bit longer. It's not a fail-proof thing, though. So sometimes, like here, the hair is really hard to pull out, so you may think, well, it's not quite ready yet. But so, it's just gonna call and just kind of experience-based that you just gotta give it a try and see how it goes. And it's definitely hard work to remove the grain, but if it's too hard, like if you spend, an hour scraping that much, then it's not ready yet. So I'm gonna try to show you all the different layers here by just removing the hair first. And you don't have to remove the hair first, you can remove everything at once. I just want to show you here the different things. So so you have the hair first. So you have the outside hair, and then you can have the inner hair, which is more of furry, keeps the deer warm. And then on the outside here, you have this dark layer, which I believe is the epidermis. And you want to remove that, which is actually really easy to remove. But underneath, there's the grain, and you have to remove the grain as well. And the grain is fairly hard to remove, and you have to put a lot of energy into it. And you want to start at the top, and then it's harder to just start, but once you've started, you're going to kind of plow underneath it, and so it should be a little easier. Okay, so here I removed all the grain, which is this thing here, and I don't know if you can tell here, but so you have all the skin itself here that's been removed, and it's dried up because I squeegeed the water out from that spot. And then I don't know if you can tell here, but there's an edge right here where there's still the grain, and the grain is really thin, but it's moist and slippery, whereas the skin itself is dry and rough. And so that's how you tell that you've removed the whole grain. And it's incredibly important that you remove every single piece of grain. And for that reason, you have to be really thorough and really methodical with the way you do your hide. So I'm going to go all the way down. I'm going to do one row, then the one next to it. And then that's pretty much the way you're going to go. You're going to go row to row to row to row until you reach the edge. And some people, when they get started, they kind of get all fed up or antsy, and they start just scraping whichever way, up and down and left and right. And that's just not very efficient at all, because inevitably you will miss some grain on the skin, and it's just incredibly hard to go back and take off that grain that's left. Pretty much you have to start over. So I really encourage you to just start and do it right from the get-go, even if it's hard. And so I'm just going to keep on going a little longer. I'm not sure how good it shows on the camera, the difference between the grain and the skin itself. But once you do it, you start seeing how the grain peels off here. And yeah. And so I'm going to go down a little bit, and I'm going to show you how to move the hide. And with big hide that's heavy, full of water in the hair, that's kind of the hardest thing to do. Sometimes you have to clean your tool, like the grain gets stuck on the edge, Kind of makes a different sound. It doesn't scrape as much. Just clean it up. So yeah, and to move it, do a couple of different things. First, I can move it, slightly like that, and keep on going. Still being really methodical. And then when I'm done, with that, just to show you, when I'm done with my section, I just lift it up and then move the height slightly to work on another spot, but still continuing methodically. Something I forgot to mention too is the pole has to be really smooth in the first couple of feet at the top. So no knots, no holes, no nothing, just so that you can do a good job scraping up the grain. So I'll keep on doing that, and then we'll get back and show you something else. Okay, so we're done scraping the grain on the hair side, and once you've worked the grain, we're going to flip it over and work on the membrane side, which is the hypodermis. It's good though, you can work it immediately after you scraped off the grain. It's kind of helpful to soak it in water again for a little time, just to make the membrane more obvious, because everything will be wet, and once you scrape it, it will dry out, and so you'll really see the difference between the wet part, which you haven't done, and the dry part, which you've already done. Because otherwise the membrane is really hard to see, even harder than what the grain was. But also, if you're just starting and you're not really sure whether you got all the grain or not, if you soak it in water overnight, in cold water, then the grain will be all swollen on the hide. So if you see this hide, it's perfectly white and flat. But if there was some slightly pinkish swollen thing, that would be the grain. And so, if you have swollen pinkish thing on your hide after soaking it overnight in cold water, that means you missed some grain, and you need to get that before you switch to the membrane side. So that's going to have a helpful thing if you're not quite sure whether you got the grain or not. Soak it in water overnight. But this is pretty good, and so I flipped the hide over. That's the grain side that I just scraped, and then now I switched it to the membrane side, which is full of dirt. The membrane kind of holds a bunch of dirt and hair, and it's important to get as much membrane off as possible too, because that's going to prevent the brains from soaking in and preventing it from getting soft. But also, the membrane never really ends. It just kind of melts into the skin itself, and so you should work it in a decent way, but don't exhaust yourself on it. It shouldn't take more than an hour to do a big hide like that. Something that I wanted to show you too, that I didn't show you on the other side, is how to work around holes. And you don't want to be at the bottom of the hole and pull, because that will make the hole bigger. To work on the hole, you kind of want to get at it from the top. So it's okay for me to scrape this way, and then I just flip the hide around and get at it the other way. So then everything is scraped around your hole, but you don't make it any bigger because you don't pull across it. And so that's something you have to do, when you grain as well. You have to be careful of holes. But now we're on the membrane side, and I'm not sure the camera will pick up on it, but I'll just scrape a little bit, and we'll end up on my tool here. And you also want to be really methodical, like on the other side, so that you don't miss anything. So here all you have the membrane mixed in with the hair. So that's this thing that gets removed. And the other side, the grain, was really a big workout to remove all the grain. The grain is really attached to the skin. And it took me about 2 hours to do the whole skin at a good workout pace. But this is really fairly light. You know, it goes fairly fast. And then you kind of see the difference here. You know, scrape off all the dirt, it's dry. Whereas here, you know, the edge is right here. You can see the difference. And same thing, you just can move it a little bit like this. That's good. So I'm gonna do the entire hide like that as well. Get off all the membrane, and then you'll be ready to soften. What I do, however, is mainly because I don't use any lye that kind of cleans out the interior of the hide. I just use straight water. There's still a lot of mucus inside the hide, and so it's really helpful, I find, to just let it dry for about 6 months or something, and that will just take care of the mucus inside as well. And so, you know, once I'm done membraning it, I'll just hang it and I'll let it dry and just put it in storage for 6 months. But otherwise, you know, if you're ready to go and you don't want to wait that long, that's fine too. It's ready to go after you take off the membrane. So I'll take off the membrane and then we'll get back to you.